who did it to me. He's the one who's causing the suffering. And that's the radical point that Buddha's making, the essential point of Buddhist practice. The words are simple, but to apply it, oh my goodness, is totally difficult because it's the complete opposite of what we think. The analysis we have in the world is completely different. You know, when I ask you, tell me about your suffering, you'll describe your boyfriend's behavior. I mean, isn't it? It's true. Tell me about your happiness, you'll describe your boyfriend's behavior. He was so kind and loving. So, of course, we assume the outside world is the source of our suffering and the source of our happiness. And Buddha doesn't argue that it doesn't play a role. Clearly, it does. The Buddha's key point is, the Buddhist point is, and this is from Buddha's findings himself, and he's not just making it up, the main source of happiness and suffering is in the mind. Lama Zopa said one time, this is very shocking, I've quoted this before, he said that the vast majority of all humans on the planet, and this is really quite shocking, that the vast majority of all humans on the planet have no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in their life. Just hear those words. It seems almost too shocking to think that's true. Well, we can prove it pretty quickly. In other words, we know we're angry and depressed and jealous or happy. We know that. But we believe that they are simply the consequences of something that happened. We believe that they're just the consequences, so therefore it doesn't play a role. We think the outside world is the main player. That's key. It's evident from our own behavior. It's not meant to be judgmental. Just have a look at it. When we even think of happiness, we think of the event. Tell me about your happiness. I'll describe the chocolate cake. Happiness, actually, I'm sure we discussed this last time. I can't remember. Maybe it was the evening teaching. I can't remember. Let's do it again, Is that this is what's so fascinating in this Buddhist analysis. There's various things going on in our mind. We've got he divides all the contents of our mind into three categories: the negative, neurotic, fear-based, I-based, unhappy, miserable states of mind. Fears, anger, attachment, jealousy, depression. We know them intimately. They're the miserable ones. Then you've got the positive ones, the happy ones, the nice ones: love, compassion, kindness, generosity, forgiveness. We know these two. Very simple way of putting it. But the third lot, we have discussed this, but it's crucial to understand this. We don't go into this usually. It's crucial. There's the other states of mind that are I call the mechanical parts of the mind. And they're the bits that make us function, to do whatever you have to do well. So, to make a cake, you need intention, you need pay attention, you need good memory, you need to keep the wits about you. What did I just put in? The eggs. And if you forget from moment to moment what you just put in the cake, you'll be a disaster. That's called mindfulness. It's not holy. It's just a practical state of mind that's necessary to function at all. But so does a sniper need very good mindfulness. They better not forget what they're doing. They'll be in trouble. They'll kill the wrong person. So this is why the third category, the mechanical bits, I call them, they neither have the character of the negative neurotic ones, nor do they have the character of the positive ones. These are very specific categories, very specific characteristics in Buddhist psychology. We don't talk like this in modern psychology. We've got different ways of describing, So in that category, this is a surprise. There's one called feeling. This is huge for the Buddha. When he talks about the five aggregates, when he has a particular sutra where he breaks up the components of the person into 5 categories. And one of them is called feeling, because it plays a massive role. Second by second, we have some kind of feeling. And there's only 3 kinds. It's not the equivalent of the word emotion. And it's in the mechanical category. It's odd. When we can see the difference, I'm sure maybe this was the Monday night we talked about this. I don't remember. Never mind, we'll talk about it again. So, okay. We did, I'm sure. So this is why I can say, even in relation to the chocolate cake, use an example of it. Use an example of your boyfriend. A person you have attachment for, which is in the first category, the neurotic state. 2, you have love for, which is in the virtuous state. And 3, you have feeling. So the kind of feelings we have, only 3 kinds: either pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, or they call neutral. Well, let's forget the neutral and look at the pleasant and unpleasant, because that's all we care about. So another word for pleasant feeling is the word happiness. And another word for unpleasant feeling is unhappiness. So we know these are big deal, these words. And in psychology these days, we're looking for definitions of happiness, are like 14 varieties of it, you know. But for the Buddhist view, it's really simple. Happiness is a word that you can use to refer to something in your mind, either sensory consciousness or mental. And we mostly go by the sensory. We're junkies. We make the body the boss. So we can see what drives us every second. This is being in samsara. We know we want pleasant feelings, which means we want pleasant feelings in the body, sensory consciousness. So the second unpleasant, like a pain, loud noise, they come, we have a panic attack. How dreadful, you know, we call that suffering. Well, suffering and happiness are other words for unpleasant feeling and pleasant feeling, which means they are mental and sensory states. But we so conflate the cake. No, we conflate attachment and the object. So we think happy, and we think then happiness even is the object. So use the boyfriend. Okay, the boyfriend. So you've got attachment for your boyfriend. That's in the first category of states of mind, neurotic, delusional, fear-based, ridiculous ones. So attachment for the Buddha is this over-exaggerated description of the deliciousness of your boyfriend. So much so, and it's coming from an emotional hunger in here that feels like you don't have enough and don't get enough and aren't enough. So naturally, all that emotional hunger dumps itself onto the outside boyfriend when you find him. And then the more you're hungry internally, the more divine he looks, the more the attachment exaggerates. So attachment comes from inside, and it comes from emotional hunger. I'm missing something. I don't have enough. I am not enough. We get that. That's the energy of attachment, dissatisfaction. So naturally, then the next energy of attachment is to hanker after something. You go out there searching for something. So depending on your personality, it might be cakes, it might be money, it might be your own body, it might be a house, it might be a boyfriend. I mean, attachment is limitless in its capacity to find some delicious thing that we think that when we get it, happiness will come. So because we assume happiness comes from the boyfriend, we even think the boyfriend is the happiness. We conflate them. So like I said before, when you're beaming, I see you smiling and beaming from ear to ear. Tell me about your happiness, Robina, and I'll describe my boyfriend. It's I mean, this is the point Lama Zopa is making. We think the boyfriend is the happiness. And not only that, we think the attachment to the object. We also confuse the attachment with the object. So we conflate attachment and the object, the boyfriend, and we conflate the happiness and the object. So everything is there in the boyfriend. So we don't notice that the attachment is playing a role. We don't notice the attachment is playing a role, and we think the happiness is coming from the boyfriend. So we've got all these literally misconceptions, Buddha saying. Literally, we have a wrong analysis. He's talking technically. He's not talking moralistically. As we understand the nuts and bolts of this, it's a revelation, you know, and tells you what Buddhist practice is. So where are the mistakes here? What's going on? Well, attachment, like I said, it's multifaceted. It comes from, it's emotional hunger. And this comes from, we have to take the view of past lives now, the Buddha's view. We come into this life programmed, the first, second conception from past practice of attachment, which brings the consequence of dissatisfaction. Whereas attachment you see is a lie that believes, that exaggerates the deliciousness of the object and then exaggerates the capacity of that object to bring you happiness. So all this over-exaggerating is implicit in the attachment. So that from having practiced believing in the delicious cake, boyfriend, this, that in the past, and then always getting disappointed because it's not valid, it's not accurate, then you end up with dissatisfaction. So dissatisfaction is from the habit of following attachment, of buying into attachment story. It's a bit like you've got $50 and you're convinced it's 500. You so believe it's 500, it even looks like 500, and you see 500. And so you expect 500's worth, and you go out there to spend it with all this anticipation and excitement. And what's the conclusion? Only disappointment, because it's not 500. It's a misconception. That's attachment. So from having practiced that, Buddha says, for eons, then we just wake up in this life with dissatisfaction, depending on how strong it is. And that dissatisfaction in general, at the grossest level, is dissatisfaction with what I've got. So always wanting something more. So you look outside for more cake, more bodies, more this, more that, something else, assuming that when I get it, I'll get happiness. That happiness is a characteristic of the object. And contact with it brings me that happiness. Somehow, because we don't analyze these things. We don't analyze. We just assume it's like that. So attachment is one state of mind. It's neurotic, delusional, I-based, fear-based, and a misconception. Love, you have love for that boyfriend. That's a virtue. May you be happy. That's perfect. To the degree you have any love at all in that relationship is the degree you'll get some happiness. If it's only attachment, you'll be like a vampire. You'll eat him for breakfast and spit out the bones and get another one. It is, it's honestly, it's like that. Like that girl who on Tinder, you know. Wish I'd had Tinder when I was younger. So easy. I can't believe it. I had to walk around the streets and go to the jazz clubs and wink at people and seduce them. On Tinder, you just press a button. I think it's so much easier. Right? So this girl was very disappointed. She just had slept with this boy, getting dressed, looks over at the bed, and he's on Tinder getting the next girlfriend. Or it's like the boy who goes to sex AA, you know, AA for sex, you know. You understand? Not triple A, not triple A. That one. I'm not being rude. We're all junkies, you know. And he said, and he talked about how he, 20 girls a day, 25 girls a day, because he said as he's having sex with one, he's already thinking of the next one. That's how attachment is. You know, don't be holy. Even as you're having your mouthful of coffee. So attachment's in there. There is this, something's missing. Oh, good, I'll get coffee. So Paul, she'd have to go out and get me a coffee, right? So when I get the coffee, attachment's hungry. And so it's anticipating the coffee. That's one part of the mind, working, attachment. So then it's anticipating. So then as you get the first mouthful, it does trigger pleasure. Guaranteed, it triggers a pleasant feeling. Whereas we believe that the pleasure is like a characteristic of the coffee, that all comes from the coffee. No, the coffee is like a trigger. It triggers a pleasant feeling. So that does happen. It does trigger a pleasant feeling. But what's happening at the same second as that first mouthful and the pleasure that comes, at the same time, attachment, even that second is not satisfied. That second, attachment is not satisfied. So attachment means building up all the anticipation. I was waiting for Sheila to come back with the coffee, anticipating. I get it in the mouth, and you'd think the logic is when I get the coffee, I'll get happy, which means I'll get content. No. This is the tragedy of attachment. Even it's walking alongside the pleasant feeling. It's walking alongside. And as you get the mouthful, pleasant feeling is triggered, definite. But attachment's not happy with it, not satisfied. That's why you have to have a second mouthful. Slightly distressed already because you're anticipating this happiness. It did come, but it's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. You've got to have another mouthful, thinking that the next mouthful will even bring more pleasure, but it doesn't. We all know, you do your analysis later. It's the next mouthful triggers slightly less pleasure, but you're still dissatisfaction, still there, hungry, hoping the third mouthful will do it, and then the second cup will do it. And then what happens eventually? You go to your third cup and you want to vomit. So you end up with no satisfaction at all and only more dissatisfaction. You understand? This is the tragedy of following attachment, you see. But you need to do the analysis every second. It's second by second, so subtle, so subtle, so subtle. Because attachment exaggerates the deliciousness of coffee. And attachment exaggerates the power of coffee to bring me happiness. Because we believe that you only get happiness when you get the coffee. This is what's so shocking. This is what's so shocking when you spell it out. That actually, what Buddha's finding, when you look into the teachings on the nature of mind, especially in the Mahamudra teachings and more in the Tantric teachings, they don't go on much about this in the beginning teachings, then the mind is the mind, its natural state, real words, your mind's natural state, to the degree that it is unencumbered by delusions, particularly attachment, the natural state of your mind, to the degree that is unencumbered by delusions, particularly attachment, is bliss, which is a really delicious word for happy feelings. That's all. So feeling, this third one in the categories, in the mechanical bits of the mind, pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling. That's it. And every millisecond you're having one of those, either pleasant or unpleasant. Another word for them is happiness and unhappiness, or suffering. And then you have a spectrum, don't you? The mildest pleasure to the most intense bliss and rapture and ecstasy. These words in English, I'm still waiting for those, okay? you understand? Then you've got unpleasant, from the mildest unpleasant feeling to the most intense suffering, terrible torture, let's say. So they're very real things, but they don't have a character of being deluded or virtuous. You've got to understand this in Buddhist psychology. We don't think this way in ordinary psychology. It's very specific. This third lot are the mechanical bits of the mind. And this feeling is just there every second, is one or the other. So the mistake, and basically the mistake is this. Buddha's saying our being in samsara is from the habit of practicing for so long, but we believe that happy feelings, happiness, bliss, joy, ecstasy, whatever you get, whatever level you get, are what we get when we get what attachment wants. That's it. And in fact, it's our only method. You wake up in the morning, you just sit there like this all day. And what comes? Total unbearable suffering feelings. So because we've got the five senses, which is the product of countless lives of practicing attachment, we've created this sense object with eyes and ears and noses and penises and vaginas and, whatever. We've created this as a result of attachment. And then we live in a universe made of attachment objects, isn't it? Sensory objects. So naturally, we assume happy feelings, happiness is what we get when we get what attachment wants. And then unhappy feelings are what we get when attachment doesn't get what it wants. And we spend our lives going between these two. This is samsara, Buddha says. And he says it's an incorrect analysis. We've got up the garden, you're up a garden path, or you're up the creek without a paddle, whichever one you want. Up a garden path is good. You're lost, you're living in la la land, he says. So he is saying, guess what, folks? I've found a method to get happiness. Don't think it's all about not suffering, not happy. We think Buddha's all miserable. You've got to give up. Like Lama Zopa says, when we hear about giving up attachment, I've got to give up my heart. I've got to give up happiness. Because we don't know the analysis, And he's saying what he's found is the nature of our mind. Forget emptiness, forget Buddha nature, way before that. But including that, to the degree that your mind is less attached, angry, jealous, depressed, low self-esteem, the neuroses, is the degree to which your mind is happy, naturally. So happiness for the Buddha comes from practicing virtuous thoughts and doing virtuous actions. That brings the result of pleasant feelings. And that also translates into pleasant experiences, because karma ripens in four ways. But more fundamentally, mind itself is naturally radiantly joyful and blissful when it's unencumbered by delusions, even temporarily. So, especially Lama Yeshe in his book Mahamudra, it's very encouraging. He describes some of the qualities that we would have having accomplished single point of concentration. I remember interviewing Venerable Rene, a Swiss monk, one of our monks who's been a meditator for like 45 years, off and on. I interviewed him in the mid-90s in Mandala magazine about one of his long 2.5-year concentration meditation retreat in Spain at Ursaling, FPMT Center there, up in the mountains. His Holiness blessed the place in 1982 and said it reminded him of Tibet. These little stone huts, up in the mountains, beautiful place. So he was there for about 2.5 years, and he was doing the single point of concentration technique. It's described in terms of 9 stages of cultivating concentration. And this comes from the Hindus. They're the ones who invented this, these genius Hindus, Then Buddha, when he diverged in his own direction, took this with him, and much of the other teachings as well. So he said in the first 6 months of his retreat, he got to about the 4th, maybe just touched upon the 5th of the 9 stages of this single point of concentration, which is very subtle. And he said something like, the joy that his mind experienced, I'm adding words here, just naturally, was so superior to any joy he'd ever experienced through his senses, meaning the joy that does come in the sensory consciousness upon contact with sensory objects. And it was so superior to that. Anybody who describes the qualities of a meditator properly, it's always this joy is, this is the point, is peaceful, not frantic. Even if you're just thirsty for water, your mind is like berserk, you know, because it's attachment, driving it. Attachment makes the mind berserk. So Lama usually talks. So the bliss, the joy, the happiness, and this is not moralistic, it's just trying to just describing it. The joy we do have based upon getting sense objects is joy, is pleasure, but it's really polluted, it's contaminated, it's limited, and it doesn't last. Whereas the Buddha says your natural state is joy. I mean, this is just getting single point of concentration, and Buddha says we've had it countless lifetimes. Lama describes in Mahamud, it sounds like science fiction to us in psychology. It sounds insane the way he describes some of the qualities you'd have. Like the joy, the bliss you'd experience. He used the word ecstasy, rapture. They're serious about this. But your mind's peaceful. Can you imagine? Peaceful. When it's through the senses, it's berserk, hysterical, you know, berserk, contaminated, polluted. That's the best we can get. It's the best we know. This is quite incredible to think about. I mean, neuroscientists do not tell you your brain is naturally blissful, with respect to it. Mm-hmm. Do you understand? You had a question. What is it?
So how do we practice cutting off desire?
Mm-hmm.
So how do we practice cutting off desire?
How do we practice what?
Cutting off desire.
Honey child, this is the path that you've been hearing all these years. This is the Buddha's path. Leave the mic, stay right there. I might want you to talk more. So your very first step, Buddha's saying, given that we're all driven by attachment, I mean, it's so pervasive and it's so primordial and so subtle and so ancient, we should be very humble with ourselves. Like I always say to you, you know, be a bit patient and humble. So when we know how profound, primordial it is, then the stages of practice are all laid out. First, but given that we're driven by attachment, the first obvious step is you control the servants of your attachment, which is your body and your speech. So you control your body and your speech. It's very obvious. If your mind's berserk, the mind is the one that's berserk, but the body and the speech do the wishes of the mind, don't they? So, you know, it's the body that keeps putting the cake in the mouth, or it's the body that keeps jumping on the new girls or the new boys or whatever we jump on, you know. It's the body that goes to the food and the music and whatever, the objects of the senses, with this frantic neediness, this hunger for the happy feelings. It's completely normal. You join the universe. So the very first level is you discipline, you control, you harness. This is junior school entry level Buddhist practice. You harness and discipline the body and speech. So the very first level, Buddha doesn't say, don't have any food, don't jump on any boys. He says, at least don't kill and don't steal and don't lie, don't harm others. The very first level. And that's pretty cool. I mean, look at the world. Because of attachment and aversion, look at what we do to each other with our body and our speech, you know. So at least don't harm others, which is pretty logical. And that by that way, you're harnessing the delusions. You know, by working on the servants of the mind, you're harnessing the mind. So, and that's intense already. That means living in vows, having discipline. You know, this is profound level of practice already. And then in our daily lives, maybe we don't jump on too many girls or boys, and we don't terrorize too many people and steal too many things. We can see, but look at our speech. This is a whole discussion. Look at our speech. We just, everything vomits out of our mouths, and look at the harm we do, talking bad about people behind their backs and bad-mouthing people, or even just the way the world is these days. It blows my mind how when you go onto the internet, and words are there, and words are coming from speech. There's just vomit, plain pure vomit. Nobody knows anything about what's true anymore. Everything just vomits out. People have conspiracy theories. I mean, like you're living in an insane asylum. At least shut our mouths. Do you understand? And then you kind of get the idea, well, yeah, I'm not going to rape people and steal and lie and kill. And then you're going to get the idea, well, maybe I can calm down on the cake as well. I mean, cake doesn't mind if you stuff it in. People do. Do you understand my point? This is the logical first step. Then with this harnessing of your body and speech, which is the first level of practice, you live in vows, you do your practice every day, and you discipline, you'll already become more content. Even though you're not even directly working on itself, the attachment, you're working on the servants of attachment, so you're naturally going to harness the attachment. Then you've got the luxury to go more deeply into the mind itself and start to identify the attachment. That's the process. But it's slowly, sweetheart. Like I always say to you, that one. And you know these words. You've heard them 1,000 times.
Yes, I was just thinking, so yesterday I woke up miserable.
You woke up miserable.
Yes, so all I wanted to do yesterday was sleep and eat.
I hear you, sweetie pie. I hear you. I totally hear you.
But it keeps happening, so.
I know. But this is common, and part of the thing is I really think that you're noticing it more now. This is one of the commonest ones. I mean, that's normal life, but no one would ever bother, no one would ever talk about it as being a problem. Because this is the point, this is the dissatisfaction. And it's where, of course. So what do you do about it? You go and eat and sleep, or you say, oh, shut up and get on with it? What do you do? A bit of both.
Well, I did that, but then I went out for a long walk.
Well, there you go, darling. So you found it. So there you go. But it's slowly. And part of the deal is learning to live with it. We highlight it a lot. Oh my God, I'm a disaster. All I want to do is eat and sleep. It's okay. It's just a symptom of attachment. And it's a symptom also of kind of thwarted attachment. So instead of wanting to go out and kill people or go get drunk, you want to go inside. That's definitely better than getting drunk and killing people. Okay, so you're making progress. You understand?
Thank you.
Better than nothing, I mean, it's better. I mean, yes, you would say have a good sleep. At least you don't do anything, no harm anybody, But I mean, this is just and then we do our best and try and be perky and try and then admire ourselves for our effort and try and be happy that you're doing your best and just keep moving forward. What else, What else, people? Yes, darling. Yeah.
I have a question on the aversion
Yeah.
and working with difficult emotions. So I'm living with my mom right now, and she's anger,
Yes.
and it's not about me,
No.
but it triggers.
Yes.
Like I want to.
I believe
her anger, but she likes it. How can I?
Sweetheart, I know.
So that it doesn't
I
impact
know.
my.
This is so difficult, darling. I mean, this is incredibly difficult because we're just so connected, especially when it's our mother. Our mother is like the red rag to the bull 100 times, isn't it? We know that. So then this is where you live with your mother, you say, and you're taking care of her. I mean, you really got the best practice on the planet for every imaginable level of compassion and of patience. And you manage to find space in it and get what you need and do what you have to do, and you're trying your best. It's incredible that you're doing it. I admire anybody who's, your nutty old mums, they're human beings like you and me. Wow.
Just keep self-forgiveness, because
What, darling?
I fall down,
Say it again, what?
So I'm sort of putting words in your mouth, saying like self-forgiveness, because there are times when things come out of my mouth.
That's right.
It's, even though it comes from love, she
That's right.
takes it poorly.
I know. Well, one of the things is that maybe what you've got to, this is where the speech comes. This is where speech, you don't punch your mum every day, do you? Okay, it's your speech, right? Okay, and your own mind, struggling with it yourself. So one of the key things, first of all, you've got to give yourself space. You got some space? You have your own, you don't sleep with your mother.
No,
I know one woman who slept with her mother. I thought, well, you've got much space for anything there. If you're going to be in the same bed as your mum, oh my God. But you've got your own room. Are you happy with your room?
Yes.
You like your room. You go there, you close the door, you breathe.
Yeah.
It's pleasing. So you've got to this is not underestimating. We underestimate this sometimes, but you mustn't. Make it as pleasing as possible. So when you close that door, you're so content to be there. It's really, don't try and be a martyr and have a lousy room. Make it nice, pleasing, not too much junk in it. When you do retreat, the Lamas all say that, make it beautiful. So when you see that place, you want to be there. If it's full of junk and misery, you don't want to be in your room. That's horrible. So make it as nice as you can. Get as much space. Do you have a practice you do every day? I like to do practice. You're religious about that. You practice every day. You must. These are the things that to help yourself to really, because never forget, you've got to rejoice at the fact that you're helping your mum. This is unbelievable kindness, I tell you. Unbelievable kindness that you can do that. So you must nourish yourself as much as possible with your practice, your own discipline, as much as you can, and your room pleasing and nice. So the next thing is when you're with her, how many hours a day is she sick and in a bed? What? She walks around the house, she goes shopping.
Sitting at her desk, shopping. It's around.
Okay, how old is she?
89.
She's lost the plot yet?
you know.
I mean, I can talk like I'm getting close to 89. I'm only 90, 79, but I can getting there, you know, so I can imagine. Go on.
She's the queen of the kingdom. You know,
Okay. Okay, so you got a big house, a small house,
It's a big space.
and she comes into your room, or that she doesn't?
Sometimes she's trying to keep her hands in everything.
Okay, well, naturally she's a mum, and mums have possession, and you belong to her, and everything. That's what attachment, one of its functions, isn't it? Wow, girl, I really admire you, your darling mother. Can you see she's suffering? Can you see her neurotic mind?
Oh, yes.
You can see that. So okay, so the key. Okay, so the key thing is you have to shut your mouth. Don't give her lectures, please. Shut your mouth. This is where the most powerful practice will be: shut your mouth. And any word you do say, it has to be kind. That's it. Don't give her lectures. Don't tell her what to do. You show her love, okay? You and this is what you have to do this, but you got to, I mean, how often do you have to be with her?
I'm trying to give her a little time each day.
But how often do you need to be with her? Are you living in the house because you're taking?
I just got there, so I've just been a couple of months now, and I'm still kind of.
So you're living in the house because to take care of her, or you're living in the house because it's free rent?
Oh, I have to do an internship, and she asked me to come help her with
Okay, good. So then it's to your advantage as well. All right. So then you're grateful for that, aren't you?
Yeah.
All right. So then how much in a day do you need to be with your mum?
I mean, I don't know yet.
Oh, I see.
You know, we don't have it.
You have to cook for her or anything?
I'm doing it. to
Shopping?
help her. I don't have to.
But you want to help her?
Yes.
Okay. So then you have to be really disciplined in the way you are around your mum. And when you know you have to be around her, you've got to make some conscious decisions. When I'm doing the dishes, when I'm going shopping, I'm doing it for her. I'm there for her. Try to get yourself really clear and decide she's mine for that hour. She can say and do what she likes. But if you're going on tenterhooks and you're going there wanting to give her lectures, then you'll just go, blah, you know. So you've got to really control your speech, really decide never to say one bad word. You've got to decide these things. It's part of the practice. You make a decision. And then when you're with her, you're just hers. Yes, mum, no, mum, 3 bags full, mum. You agree with whatever she says, or let her just say it without having to buy into anything she says. Let her say what she likes. I mean, if you decide that, it'll be a lot easier than just hoping you'll be that way. You've got to decide, darling. It's very conscious. It's very intentional. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
You have to be that way. And don't just hang around boringly with it, because that'll just activate things. So when you're with her, you only say good things. You let her say what she likes, let her do what she likes, let her think what she likes, and it's water off a duck's back for you. You have to practice that. Then you'll be a lot happier. Because if you feel like a victim, that's the end. And then slowly, and you have to also remember that she gave birth. Remember all these practices. She gave birth to you, she fed you, she cleaned your dirty bottom, she helped you tie your shoelaces, she looked after you, as neurotic as she is. She didn't kill you, you're still here. You understand? So try and think of all the good things and paint a new picture of her. And then it'll be easier to be kind and patient to her. But you've got to control your mouth and don't give her lectures. Don't tell her off. Don't argue with her. You just got to decide. And when you've decided, it's a lot easier. If you don't decide it, it won't happen. And you understand?
Yes, I hear you.
This is really important, darling.
Good counsel.
Wow. Very great. Someone else? Yeah, go.
I have a question about the environmental karma.
Yeah.
And from my understanding about karma, it exists inside one's own mind with imprints from past actions and projections onto processes or that we label as objects. Then when environmental karma comes into consideration, it seems like there's some kind of omnipotent puppet master.
No, I understand your point. No, it's not like that. I'll tell you. I'll explain. And the best way to understand is the Vajrayana model, the more sophisticated esoteric teachings. It's not that complicated. It's the same system that the Ayurvedic people use, maybe similar to the Chinese, and there's the Tibetan medical system. So you've got, according to that model, there's the universe, okay? And it's made of, got 2 things. It's got minds, and then it's got matter, right? Trees and mountains and, wood and houses is the matter. And then you've got sentient beings who are and a bunch of them are embodied. And we've all got, so, okay, in the context of this model, all minds are inextricably linked to their own set of the 4 elements. This is the crucial one to understand. And those 4 elements, and those 4 elements are the same character as the 4 elements out there. you understand? In fact, this is the 4 elements. What else is it? This is external matter. You've got internal and external, and the 4 elements are external. So we are these embodied beings. Our 4 elements happen to be conjoined with a mind. And you've got trees and moons and stars that aren't conjoined with a mind. So this is the first thing in general. So then now, okay, you've got gross consciousness, which is your sensory consciousness, which is inextricably linked to your gross, this bag of bones here, right? You're inextricably linked. You can't have an eye, you can't have a cognition of shape and color, which is your mind, unless the eyeball and all the nerves are working properly, the lights are on and everything. All the conditions come together, you have a cognition of shape and color. This is the 5 sensory consciousnesses, and it's linked to this gross body. So when you go through the death process, the first 4 stages, by the time you stop breathing, your sensory consciousnesses have ceased. The gross body is ceased functioning. You understand? But now you've gone to your subtle level of mind, which we don't posit. This way of describing, we don't posit in the modern world. And that your subtle mind mainly is really the mental states, all your love and compassion and kindness and more subtle states. And that's inextricably linked with this subtle physical energy called your 72,000 subtle channels, your subtle body, and coursing through those channels are all different wind energies, prana. And then all your states of mind are connected to those winds throughout. I mean, this is not neuroscience, okay? All your attachment, anger, and love and compassion all have their own wind energies. So the delusions have the winds are polluted. So when your Tibetan doctor feels your pulses, she can feel the imbalance of certain winds that they're berserk and they're related to your attachment. That's why you're having anxiety and panic attacks. Your anger causes something else. So your Tibetan medical, the system, the herbs work on the winds, which calm the mind down that's linked to those winds. Do you understand? It's very intimately linked. That's your subtle mind and subtle body. Then when you get to the 8th stage of the death process, which is the subtlest level, all the grosser levels have ceased. Everything comes down to the very subtle consciousness, the subtlest level of your mind, which is inextricably linked with the very subtle wind. All the deconstructed wind energies can come down to the subtlest level. And that subtle wind and subtle mind is what then leaves the body and is imprinted with all the millions of karmic seeds from all the actions you've done since beginningless time. So before you stop breathing, a particular karmic seed, in your case being a human, at the time of your past death, a few weeks before you found your way to your mummy's womb, your particular virtuous karmic seed of non-killing was triggered, which programmed you already to go to your mummy's human womb a few weeks later, the mummy you've got now. At the same time that all the millions of karmic seeds from your habits, from different habits through countless past lives, all those karmic seeds were triggered and they became your personality. All the traits you have, good or bad, you're a psychopath, you're a musician, you're a footballer, all your personality traits, all your own tendencies are already triggered at the same time that come along with this package. You with me? Mm-hmm. The third way your karma ripens is all the karmic seeds that will produce your different experiences at the hands of others, all the people you're going to meet, how they love you, hate you, kill you, rape you, give to you, take from you. Look at the world. We're going to meet lots of beings and they do good things or bad things to us. All of those karmic seeds are triggered. And then fourth, the karmic seeds that will produce the very physical environment that you get born in. So and this is the thing, as Lama Zopa says, in your the subtle mind, let's say your anger is there, your anger is chatting away. Anger is a delusion. It's like attachment to what it wanted. It's upset and angry. Itself, you develop the habit to be angry, and you then pollute the wind energies connected to the anger, and that eventually manifests at the gross level as your physical sickness, because the subtle wind and the body are linked. There's just a subtle level of it. So anger pollutes you. It grows the anger and it pollutes the winds, and then that eventually becomes sickness. And in turn, that impacts upon the external elements and causes pollution and the elements to harm you. I mean, it's kind of sophisticated how it works, but there's no boss. It's a natural law that's playing out every second. Doesn't need a boss. Are we communicating? A little bit like that. So the 4 results of killing, if the 4 ways karma ripens, if you had killing manifesting as a main rebirth, you'd be a lion or something, okay? But forget, you're a human, so that's non-killing that was triggered. But the other ones, you might have a tendency in this life to kill. You might get killed or die young, which is the experience. And the 4th one, the physical world itself harms you. You get sick, the air's polluted, the water's polluted, because due to past killing, the physical world harms you. But you could have the tendency to kill, but have no experience similar to the cause of killing. No one's going to kill you. You won't die young. And fourth, you can have really good environmental karma of non-killing, and you can eat whatever you like and be fat and healthy. Even if you're living in a polluted place, if you've got non-killing karma environmentally, it won't harm you. You can eat anything you like. I always quote Robert, what's his name? That rich fellow, he's like 90 now. What's his name?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett, I always quote him. I remember reading his biography when he was like 80, now he's like 90 something. And his daughter said, I've never seen water pass his lips. And his diet since he's like 4. Cheeseburgers, vanilla ice cream, and some variation of flavored Coca-Cola. And that's it. And he's 90 and fat and healthy. So that means he's got really good non-killing environmental karma. Even though he's living in the polluted world that you and I live in, he gets nourished. Do you understand?
So through the interconnectivity of the interdependence of
Yeah.
forms, what one does in their own mind manifests
In all these 4 ways. We are literally the creators of all these experiences. So if you have people in front of you who harm you and kill you, due to your past actions. If you have the environment that is nourishing you, it's due to your past actions. Everything you experience. As Lama Zopa says, first karma and then everything else. So the main reason you get sick is not because of the food is bad. That's a secondary one. It's because you got killing karma. I mean, you think of healthy people die young, Healthy people get sick all the time. I mean, everything, the first one is karma. Every time is karma. So with the way environment impacts upon you, if it's healthy and delicious, due to non-killing, mainly non-killing. And all the different negative and positive actions have their own particular result of all the 4 kinds. I mean, they give you in the beginning of the team, they give you the basic principles, but it's all there in the literature that you can extrapolate even, and it can all be explained, it's all because it's a natural law. This is a natural law. No one's running any of it. It sounds quite logical if you take these, if you take these certain hypotheses, but it's a bit cosmic for us in the West, it doesn't sound like hilarious, it sounds like science fiction. Are we communicating? Okay, good. That's why the very first level of practice is, don't worry about nirvana and Buddhahood yet. It's just like, honey, you want happiness, Robina, next life? Well, then, darling girl, don't kill, don't steal, don't lie, don't cheat, don't jump on the wrong partner. And then what you'll end up with, if you just by living basic morality, by living in vows, you'll end up next life with a decent human body, really good tendencies, no thought to kill or steal or lie. No one will kill, steal or lie from you, and you'll have a really nice environment. I mean, the very minimum, we want that. Solution, don't cause it. It's hardly complicated. Do you understand? Okay. What else, people? No questions on Zoom here? Yes.
I'm so glad that you asked that question.
But here's her mummy. You got a mummy story as well, have you, darling? Are you taking care of your daddy or your mummy?
It's a brother and
Oh, sweetheart. Same story, though.
it's the same story.
Oh,
And they don't live with me, but they are, we're very fortunate to have an asset that our grandparents gave to us.
a what?
Asset. It's a small building and it gives me some money.
Oh, wonderful. How
It's
fortunate. Amazing. Yeah, go on.
And my brother and uncle have been just spending and spending and spending and spending. And this is on so many levels. I know I need to practice.
Go on, then, go on, go on.
I have to put my daughter through college, my youngest daughter, my oldest daughter just finished. And I'm also trying to be responsible for retirement.
So you're taking care of the financial needs of your brother and your uncle, you're saying?
No, they've taken over the asset, basically.
They run this piece of property.
Yeah, and they're running it.
Who owns it?
We all own it, but they
Or the
won't.
family own it?
And so the yelling that I have been doing, which I stopped recently because I knew it was bad, but
Right.
stop what you're doing to our money and our.
But who empowered them to take it over? That's a crucial point. Who empowered them? If you guys have got some kind of decent management structure, it wouldn't happen.
Yes.
Who's got the power then in the end?
Legally, it's my uncle and me. We're the managers.
So the uncle's one spending the money.
Yes.
And it's his son who's your,
they
go on.
Stop. He says, oh, it has to be a majority decision. But I don't know how much depth I have to go into, but let me see if I can explain it.
I know, but the key thing is how much power you have. Because if the point is this, if you don't have any power to
Mhm.
influence decisions, you just got to have to relax and see the money go down the toilet, honey child. But if you've got the
Right.
power to
Right.
change it, then with the best motivation, you change it.
I would say I don't have the power to change it because even though my uncle and I are
Equal owners.
equal managers technically and legally,
But how can he be? But if you're equal managers, you can't make unilateral decisions. It's very clear. So it doesn't make sense what you're saying.
I know, he said that, basically, we decided as a group to let my uncle and my brother run the business and get paid for it.
So you empower them to do what, but surely there's no
Yes.
board of directors kind of they report to.
Just me and my.
Well, then,
uncle.
honey, you've got a really awful structure then, haven't you?
Yes.
Asking for trouble.
Yes, totally.
And they're really tipping their money down the toilet, are they? Ruining it.
They're not ruining it totally, but the money that could pay for college for my daughter that they're throwing away. Yeah, and more, and I'm.
So you think there's nothing you can do legally? I mean, because that's the only recourse you've got, isn't it?
Yes, and what I'm trying to do, like, you were, what is your name?
Maxine.
Maxime on Michael. What Maxime was saying is, she's doing something very kind for her mother, but because of her mother's anger and how it triggers us like the red flag to pull. I know that I've been saying and doing things that are harmful, so I've been working really hard
Yes,
not to.
exactly.
Even though I get wicked triggered, like triggered beyond.
Yes.
Can I say one thing about it that's really helped me?
Go.
I'm also doing. Water.
Go on. Sorry.
So I've been working with a psychiatrist. And what I've seen is that the trigger, the anger and the rage it's rage.
I understand.
Deep attachment.
Exactly, of course. Yeah.
Is really old in this lifetime. At the very least, I can see it. It's been going on for 40, 50
of course.
years.
That's right.
And this is just another example of how they're behaving, which is so what I perceive as harmful to me.
Yes, exactly.
And so I keep trying to yell at them and shake them.
Yeah, I know.
But this is what you said to Maxine is so powerful. It's
Yeah.
been really
Have to go.
internalized.
Yeah.
But it wasn't until I realized how deep and old the rage is that I could really relax my speech
Oh, okay, good.
and become much more accepting.
Good. But meanwhile, when you're more calm and not vomit out the rubbish, you can then at least do things that are practical that can help. So
Yes.
that's when, if you've got some space, you can at least see, is there something we can do legally to change the situation?
Yeah.
Because that's your only recourse. Telling him not to do it won't help.
Really, really does.
Impossible.
And so now I'm saying, but this is the other piece is like, I'm, and this just feels like attachment, but it would help me see this.
Mhm.
I'm trying to set up very kindly and generously boundaries so that to the best possibility I can protect this, my retirement money and the money for my daughter's college without doing verbal harm or physical harm.
And that's the only way to do it. Verbal harm doesn't help. You've just got to use legal recourse to make it happen because it's all structured. So you've got to find ways to do it legally. There's no other way.
And
But
then,
can you find those though?
I think I can, and I have to decide whether I want to spend the money to do it. There are a couple other
Exactly.
things helping this.
Exactly.
We're gonna sell the building and disband this.
You're going to.
LLC. We've already have a birth.
Oh, well, then you
It's
solve,
ending soon.
then you've solved the problem
Yeah,
before they piss it all down the toilet, excuse me.
yes, no, that's right. But I still regret very deeply how I handled it, and
I
I
know.
see how blind I was.
No, I
because of
understand.
it.
That's good, but that's good. So regret's really healthy. It means, look what and this is the thing about, we do this purification practice. First step is regret, but it's like compassion to yourself. I regret it because you know what? I'm sick of this suffering. Michael, I am fed up with this suffering. I'm sick of this suffering. Regret's like self-compassion. Then you have compassion for the person you harmed. Then you make it and do it in practice, and then you vow not to do it again. It's a very practical process. So regret's healthy, not guilt. Because you're sick of the suffering. You've got to be sick of the suffering first. You've got to be sick of it. Then you can have compassion. You've got to be yourself first. It's crucial to remember that. Your mum the same. You have to regret your own junk because you are fed up with this habit. Then you can afford to have compassion for your brother, for your uncle, whatever he is.
And I get stuck sometimes. So that sounds like the Vajrasattva.
It is exactly.
Purification,
Exactly.
which I do as frequently.
Amazing. But remember the regret, it's not just guilt.
Yes.
I'm
That's what I was
sick
gonna
of the
say.
suffering.
That's what I was gonna say. I still not good enough, not good enough.
No,
not
that's
good
not, no, you've
And
got to
I-
stop
and-
that. You've got to stop that. You've got to be content with your progress and delight in your progress. Otherwise, you're never ending. Until you, I mean, and the more you can be controlled and clear, the more effective you can be. Whereas anger is useless. Nothing can happen. Well done, Michael. I rejoice. We all rejoice. Oh, there's my hot water. Thank you, darling.
Oh, hot water.
Cold is fine.
In the chat.
Okay, go on.
Actually, Joe Courtin has his hand up.
Go, Joe. Talk to me.
Hi, thank you. I have a question on an organization I'm volunteering for. It's a nonprofit. I have more of a for-profit, high-performance background, and I view this organization as like a toddler that is now barely starting to walk, and they're very proud of walking. And I could see them being like a marathon runner or sprinter and doing so much more. And I'm struggling to get the sort of intensity or accountability or fire out of the folks who are very well-intentioned. And I'll even I'll even invoke sometimes sort of the death meditation of, death is certain.
Yeah,
we don't know when, or thinking of like Tonglen sort of Lojong practice of like, okay, let's have me be the enemy so that they realize that they're not serving their constituents enough.
Listen, Joe, I just think from the beginning when I started running our nonprofit, the prison project, I hate the nonprofit mentality. It is horrible. It is victim mentality, begging, goody. It is revolting.
Right.
The for-profit commerce done with bodhicitta is by far superior. So don't pussyfoot with them, for God Almighty's sake. Just get them encouraged and excited to know how much more successful they can be by using commerce. You're so correct. It can be done with, they don't realize it can be done with bodhicitta, with compassion.
Okay, bodhicitta.
You've got to be,
No, it's more about there's this culture of everyone being like nice to each other and polite.
Exactly.
But we're not solving the problem of meeting our constituents' needs. And I feel like by being so nice and polite to each other, we're not serving our end constituents as much. And so I'm wondering, like, do I have to kind of be that like sports coach to be a little bit shake the cage a little bit? But is that
yes, Joe, to get people to be effective and to be accountable and to use I think it's doing nonprofit is perfect, but to use commercial principles.
Okay.
People conflate greed with money, but it's just rubbish. Greed is one thing, money's another. And you can get the best commercial principles with bodhicitta. It's so clear to me you can do that. It's more effective, and we don't think it's a dirty word in our culture. So you've got to get them to be more productive and more effective and more. I agree with you totally.
Okay, thank you.
Go for it, Joe. I'm all on your side. Yes.
Hi.
Hello, darling.
This is a very light, simply silly question, nothing to do with mums or uncle.
Go on, darling.
So it's about non-killing, and I'm vegan and I'm all about the non-killing.
Yeah.
What do you do about cockroaches in the kitchen?
I understand, darling.
I mean, what do you do?
I know, girl. I know. It's really not easy. So that's why the Dalai Lama, when he gives refuge in the layperson's vows in public groups now, typically when you take refuge and take the five layperson's vows, the vow is to not kill any living being. And that's too shocking for us Westerners, because we assume by default, you slaughter the rats and the roaches. It's shocking to hear you wouldn't kill them, especially in New York, where you're roaches as big as rats, aren't they? So it's not an easy one, but you got to start somewhere. But the key part, you got to start somewhere. So do you have a wish not to kill?
Yeah.
And in general, do you have a wish not to kill anything? Would you have that?
Yes,
yes. You'd like to not ever have to kill. So you want to grow the habit in your mind. I do not want to kill. You want that.
Yes,
like that.
It's very big in me.
Okay, good. Yeah. So you have, incidentally, you've got a vow not to kill, or you haven't taken refuge? You have.
Yes.
So you got a vow not to kill. Okay, oh, good. Okay, good. So that means it's in your mind saying 24 hours a day. So one of the things about not killing, the vow not to kill, it means you've got to have the courage to have the thought, I don't want to kill. So if you have that thought and you've got the vow not to kill, that drives your mind, that programs your mind, and it actually will protect you. It also, in its nature, it will purify the karma that you might otherwise have had in order to kill. Have you found that you're always being bumping into creatures that you feel you have to kill? Or is this occasionally, or what?
No, it's not. When I see a spider in the room, I say hi.
So, but for these roaches, you got roaches for neighbors?
I don't know where they're coming from.
Lots of roaches. Okay, so listen. Or you see, it's okay. When we have the view of karma, if you try to, that's why it's hard to practice it. Everything that's in front of you is your karmic appearance. So you have to realize that they're your cockroaches. It's a really personal relationship you've got with these dudes. They were your mother countless lives. They were your father countless lives. They've been your boyfriend countless lives. And now they're manifesting as cockroaches. So, it's like, this is how to think. Every single sentient being you meet, whoever they're pretty ones, ugly ones, beautiful things, nice things, a rainbow, two people shouting at each other. It's your karmic appearance. First of all, that's the most fundamental view to try and get, not just I'm this innocent victim and how dare cockroaches come into my house. They're your cockroaches, honey child. All this is part of the process. So then the next step, because you've got a vow, then you have to, it's hard to have compassion for them, but you've got to, but this is the first point. You've got to not want to kill them. Forget compassion, but for your sake. This is just the thinking to do. This is the thinking to do. We're going to get to a thing about how to, what to do when they do come. But this is all the thinking that has to be underneath. So that means you have to know that everything you think and do and say put seeds in your mind that will bring any of the four results: rebirth, tendency, experience similar to the cause, or environmental. So you have to ask yourself the question, do I want to be killed? Do I want to have a tendency to kill? Do I want to be harmed? Do I want to have a lousy environment? And the answer has to be no. So, so it's a bit like sometimes you're not saying this, you're addicted to sugar, and it'll cause diabetes. So we tend to think, because it's all kind of the punishment mode, we think it's that. You go to your doctor, oh, doctor, I can't stop having sugar. Can I please not get diabetes? It doesn't work like that. Karma takes care. You understand? Yeah. So the idea is to have the courage to not want to kill, to have the practice every day, to do your purification every day, because that put atomic bombs under the tendency to kill. It purifies the likelihood that you will have to kill. It prevents you from meeting creatures that you might need to kill. The whole dynamic changes if you can have confidence in that. So now, let's say you've got cockroaches. Is it 1,000 or 2?
No, there was, 1 or 2, and now there's 5 or 6, 7, 8. So
have you done your research?
Well, I moved into a brand new building. I'm the only one.
It's got cockroaches.
Yeah.
I see.
I've spoken to everyone. It's a brand new building, and the landlord said there's no entry point. But it's coming up through the drain.
The sink. I see, yeah.
And so I spoke to everyone else in the building, no one else.
Is it a co-op when you pay your maintenance, is there to slaughter the cockroaches weekly?
So the landlord put things around the outside of the building.
Okay. So what do you do then? What do you do with these cockroaches? You kill them.
Well,
you don't have to confess to us. Don't worry about it. We all understand.
Well,
right?
Okay, so I don't want to kill them, but I don't want them in my.
Okay, so you don't want to kill them, but you kill them. We've got to be sincere. We've got to be.
Yes, I got one of those boxes that are. It's a little cardboard box with a glue on the bottom.
What, darling? What happened?
It's a little.
So you are killing them. So then you got to make. Well, honey, child, you got to make some decisions.
So
you've got to make some decisions.
So the decision is just live with roaches?
No, that's nihilistic. You have to look at methods of how to get rid of cockroaches and then methods of how to prevent them.
Right.
Don't just be nihilistic. Oh, well, come and rape me. It's karma. I don't want to hurt you, but you can rape me. Don't be silly. You do what you can. You do your research. You try to have compassion. If you meet them, say a few mantras and blow on them for their benefit. Do what you can to get rid of them without harming them. That's all you can do.
Right.
You can't do, but meanwhile, try and
work out like how can I deal with myself?
You've got to just be realistic and look into the system of what it is that what attracts them, where do they come from, how do you prevent it, and what do you do when you get them? So you've got to catch them and send them off somewhere.
Right.
But you need a bit of patience. Like I've always told the story of our friend Tukdam Pemo, this nun who died recently. She was a meditator, a yogini, amazing human being. So she was in retreat for years, and she had her big sacks of flour up in the mountains there somewhere. And then they all, what were moths initially? Were moths little worms or bugs or something? Okay, whatever it is, but her flower was overrun by these. They all became moths, and she had a plague of moths in her retreat house. And she was telling Lama Zopa how for weeks, if not months, she'd go around, you know, with a cup and get it, and then release it. Weeks. How kind. So it's a practice for you to understand karma. It's a practice for you to have compassion. Then calm down, don't have a panic attack. They're just sentient beings, you know. The little mothers who want to be happy, don't want to suffer. So say mantra, blow on them. Meanwhile, do what you can, be reasonable. But for your own sake and for their sake, try not to kill. I mean, you've got a vow and you don't want to mess up yourself, you know.
Yeah.
Big girl about it. Do you understand?
Yes.
Good job.
Does everyone else have some practice?
Go on and talk to me.
I don't want to be redundant, but have the exact same problem.
Oh my God.
You mentioned it, but it's with a few mice.
Mice.
It's not where
Yeah.
I live. I'm lucky enough to have a property that I own with my sister, where we rent it out.
Yeah.
I've done a lot to try to, I really don't want to kill.
Sure.
And I'm
How are you dealing? How are you dealing with it?
I've actually tried to get rid of them, and peppermint oil and just things that,
Right.
you know, repellent. This doesn't seem to be working. So I'm at that point, I'm somewhat.
I mean, what's the source of all these creatures? Is it getting to the source, the point or not?
I'm surprised because it's not a food source. They're like under a stairwell, you know, it's outdoors, at an outdoor stairwell. But there's no food there. It's kind of driving me crazy. I don't know why, especially after kind of repellent and things like that. Why would they want to stay?
Shelter is a.
Yeah, but I mean.
The thing is, you know, all we can do is what we can do. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's not a miracle. There's no miracle answer to it.
Yes,
But what the interesting, I think if I don't know, if you really have confidence in the karmic view, if you do, and you can't be forced to have it, and you really do the purification, you really have compassion, you really regret, and you really keep your vows, and you really purify, don't be surprised they'll stop coming. Because karma changes the environment. Whatever you do in your mind changes the environment, changes the situation. So you've got to have, as much as you can, do what you can. All we can do is do that. I mean, we can't be saints, but it's not the habit to try to get rid of is, oh, well, I can't help it. It's not my fault. That's a bit like going to the doctor. Like I said, I can't help eating sugar. Can I get off the hook, please? It doesn't work like that. Sugar causes, you know, diabetes. That's how it is.
Unless you warrant.
Pardon?
Unless you warrant.
Unless what?
Unless you buffer.
But then we're talking, I know, but we're talking karmically long term.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm talking just, you know, yeah.
I mean, the microphone.
Yeah, yeah. How are we going for time? I've got a deadline here.
I guess.
Okay, fine. Go.
I guess I feel like the whole thing about not killing is so complicated because yeah, I mean, I try not to kill anything unnecessarily.
Oh, unnecessarily, but there can be some though. You said unnecessarily.
But you know, like in my block, people put out cat food in the streets all the time and drives me crazy because all they're doing is, you know, they're breeding more cats.
Uh-huh.
And what is cat food? It's made of animals.
I understand.
So, you know, like these people are trying to save their cats.
No, but so what's the point for you though? The bottom line is what can you do
Right.
in your life
that's
when
what I'm
you
saying.
meet a living being?
Right, I mean, you know, like once I was walking down the street and there was a dying bee and I didn't want anybody to step on it.
I understand, darling.
So I took the bee and I put it on the garden.
Sure.
So I got home and there was an ant in my plant and I killed it.
I know, that's
So
right.
I'm saying,
You
like,
can't
you know,
win.
yes.
No, you can't win. So that's why all we can do, the best we can do, and this is forget about compassion, is for our own sake to protect our mind from harming others. That's why the karmic one is so important to remember. First is for yourself. It's the hardest one in the West. Are you hearing me? No.
The hardest one is.
The hardest thing in the Western world, when we hear about karma, the first step is to realize that I don't want to kill for my sake, because I don't want to put the tendency in my mind. This is really like compassion for yourself. Forget compassion for the ant and the bee. It's got to be first compassion for ourselves, to realize that everything we think and do and say programs my mind and brings those results. So to be, in other words, if it's like the diabetes one, you'd be so cautious about eating sugar because you know you don't want diabetes. So that's the attitude to have towards not killing and stealing and lying. You've got to be cautious because I don't want to sow the seeds. So you could argue if you just, if there's like, you know, when you go in India, it's like Jurassic Park, you know, in the rainy season, you're breathing in creatures, you're walking on a carpet of creatures. So you've got to be so conscious that you're probably slaughtering all the time. And we are already slaughtering all the time. The tiny baby creatures, our bodies are walking zoo. So it's more to have a really powerful kind of awareness that we are so interdependently connected to so many living beings. We're breathing them in our arm. It's just there's apparently like a zoo under our armpit. You know? So we've got to have this bigger picture and not want to be harming others and have our vow every day and keep our vow every day, purify the vow every day. That's what changes the karma. All we can do is do what we can. You know? That's all I'm trying to say. With a sincere wish not to break the vows, not to kill, not to steal, not to lie. Do you understand? People, because there's no simple solution to it. Yes.
Let's follow up on that point.
Yeah.
What we were talking about earlier. I feel compelled. I haven't felt good about that, even the slightest thought in a very long time, but I feel like I don't want to.
That's right.
But if it does come to that, if it happens, is there a mantra that I could say?
No, I know, darling, listen, there's so many things you can do to mitigate what you do, you know.
No, that's a bit, it's to help that.
Of course,
To help that.
any creature you meet,
to move on.
but any creature you meet, you should, one of the first things to do is say mantra, any mantra, and blow, because the mantra blesses your breath. And then you blow on the creature, you blow on the piece of steak, you blow on the piece of fish you're going to eat, you blow on the ants. That's a really beneficial way to help the sentient.
Which mantra? Though?
Any mantra, doesn't matter. On money, anything, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. That's really beneficial. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, darling.
As far as I understand, karma has to do with your individual acts. But what about when you can avoid somebody to do something?
Say it again.
And karma is something about my actions, not about other actions. But
Yeah.
what about if I can avoid somebody doing something?
Somebody else.
Killing whatever, a route or.
Yeah.
And I don't intervene.
And I don't intervene. Okay, this is where you've got to have some wisdom to know. I mean, we can run around wanting to make everybody stop harming others, but they'll tell us to mind our own business and keep harming. So you've got to have the wisdom to know that if your intervention would be useful. And very often it's not. So you've got to be wise and have the courage to try at least. I mean, people might just say, mind your own business and keep killing, you know, at least you can try. But
that doesn't affect your own karma. But that doesn't affect directly your own karma.
it everything to do with your motivation. So if you just don't care, oh, look at all those people killing, I don't care, then you got to see your mind. That's really delusional. But if you try your best to help others, that's marvelous action. To try and help someone else not create negative karma is wonderful. But it's not always that you will be able to have effect. I mean, you can walk up to, if you can go tomorrow to the Ukraine and ask the Russians to kindly leave, they're not going to leave. The karma's too strong. It's the same with some people. You know, I remember vividly one time, you know, intervening with two people having a fight. The guy was being very aggressive. Well, she turned around and said, mind your own business, and kept fighting. So we've got to have wisdom to know when to intervene. But meanwhile, have the thought that if you could, you would, and have compassion. You understand? You just not care. That's important. Yeah. So this clock, what's it mean? It says 1:50. It's really 2:50, isn't it?
It's 10 to 3.
Oh, 10 to 3. Good. Okay. So we've got 10 more minutes. Any questions, everybody? Any questions there from people on Zoom or here? Okay. Yes, darling. Talk to me. Yes.
I just want to know, like, the age-old question, how do you let go of guilt? Feel guilt?
I know, darling. It's a very deep one. It's a
Yes.
very, very, very instinctive, deep one. Ancient one. Okay, let's look at it. So guilt is when you do something naughty, you notice you did something, right, isn't it? And then the conclusion is, and I'm a bad person. That's guilt, isn't it? Okay, so this is where we've got to just learn to change our, we've got to catch it. It's deeply ingrained, but we've got to change the conclusion. So let's say you do something naughty, like you stole from somebody, or you lied, or you badmouthed your sister or something. You catch it and you say, I did do it. So the first part of guilt is I did that. Well, the second part, this attitude is also the same. You acknowledge that you did do it, But then instead of saying, oh, I'm a bad person, you say, what can I do to fix it? It's a simple, but it takes time, because the impulse to assume I'm a bad person, it comes like together with the feeling I'm naughty. It's very, very deep. And I think if we analyze it also, guilt is very linked to the very deep attachment inside us that we've had since we're born, to make mummy happy and daddy happy, and to do what God said, to do what mummy said, to do what grandma said, to do what the government said. Because we're always looking around to make sure we're approved of. So guilt, when you break the cup and no one's in the kitchen, you're looking around to see who saw you break the cup. I'm a naughty person, because you've memorized that mummy said you shouldn't break cups. So we're always trying to get approval. So when you get guilt, you learn to recognize that you just, instead of, oh, I'm a bad person because mummy would have criticized you, daddy would criticize you, you learn to say, okay, I did break the cup, and own it. You own it. And not try to hide it from yourself, and not try to conclude I'm a bad person. It's quite hard because the instinct is so deep. Right. And then you see if you can do something to fix it. Tell yourself to shut up and don't badmouth your sister again, because you don't want the suffering yourself. When we do the purification practice, it's like that. The first step is to regret that you did that action that harmed another, but you regret it because it harms you. I think are we communicating here? Yeah. Because guilt, when does guilt arise in you, for example? When would it arise? In a situation where you do something naughty, yeah? Is it, or what?
Oh, yeah, there's lots of triggers, but it's something like it's way from the past, and you can't fix it.
No, that's right. Okay. No, that's right. You can't fix it. So, but you can think that, okay. Yeah, I understand. Yeah. I mean, let's say you stole from your auntie when you were 7. It's too late now. Auntie's dead. But you can regret that you did it. This is the first step, because I don't want the tendency to keep stealing. You own it because you realize that bad thing is going to harm you. That's the first one, and that's like compassion for yourself. Then you have compassion for your auntie because you harmed her, and then you think, I'm not going to steal again, for anybody in general. At least, something is kind of a more healing, more wholesome attitude. But right. The deepest one is because we're always thinking that someone's judging us. That's what guilt is related to, being judged by others. And it's very instinctive. Since we're born, we're trying to make mummy happy. God is telling us not what to do. The police, the government, mummy, daddy, grandma, grandpa. I'm always trying to please everybody. So then if we don't, we think we're a bad person. So we've got to stop. So then we got to recognize we're not perfect, recognize we do bad things, regret having done it because you're sick of the suffering, have compassion for the person you harmed, and then make a decision, try not to do it again. It's more wholesome. It's a bit like every time you eat sugar, oh, I'm a bad person, I'm going to get diabetes. That's not helpful. I did eat sugar. I don't want diabetes. I'll try to change. Your own responsibility. Guilt is a bit not taking responsibility. But when you take responsibility, well, I did do it. I did lie, I did steal, I did harm, I did cheat. Own it. And if you didn't, then don't say you did it, because guilt exaggerates as well. Guilt exaggerates your badness, because it's really related to just a feeling of not being good enough, isn't it? Don't you think?
Yes.
Not being, and what that means is not being good enough according to whose view? God, mummy, daddy, grandma, grandpa, the world. It's not very logical. It's quite illogical, So we've got to learn to be realistic, be accountable for our problem, own our problem, but at the same time, own your good qualities. We never own our good qualities. We always say our bad qualities. You understand? It's very subtle, very primordial, very linked to the way ego works, It's very painful too. It's one of our worst crimes against ourselves. We're always dissatisfied with what we do. Always finding fault. It's not appropriate. Are we communicating? Good, darling. Time to go, I'd say. Oh, here, as Maywood, you talk to me, darling.
So
Yeah.
Robina, it would seem if we really unpack attachment and go deep into it, underneath attachment is the feeling I'm not enough. Is that right?
No, it's a characteristic of it. Well, okay, attachment is multifaceted. The most primordial. Okay. From having practiced attachment in the past, because it's an over-exaggeration of the deliciousness of something, it's emotional, it becomes dissatisfaction. So the most primordial feeling of attachment, yes, is dissatisfaction. I don't have enough, and even more subtle, I am not enough. That's a symptom of attachment. It's a symptom of attachment.
Oh,
Never
it's
been
not the cause, it's not the underlying cause of attachment, that
An underlying
feeling.
cause of attachment is believing in a separate, independent I in the first place. That's the root delusion. Ego grasping is the root delusion that posits a real self-existent me. And the consequence of that is this dissatisfaction that me isn't enough. So it's finally the consequence of ego grasping, and the solution to that is to realize emptiness.
Oh, okay. And so attachment then is really the suffering of happiness.
No, nothing to do with that.
It's not, I mean, because
No,
happiness,
No, nothing wrong with that. Happiness is perfect. Happiness is happy feelings. How marvelous. The more happiness, the better, please.
I meant like the second noble truth, that if you are pleased with something, this change is going to cause it to change, and then you won't be pleased with it anymore, and then you will suffer. So isn't that the suffering of happiness?
I'm completely confused. Start again.
Well, you know, there's the suffering of
Oh, the
suffering.
different levels of
And
suffering.
then-
Suffering is suffering.
Yeah,
The gross
and
suffering,
then
when attachment,
the next one.
okay, the better way to put it, I understand. The grossest level of suffering is the suffering of suffering, which is when the bad
Right.
things, which if
Right.
you like, is when attachment doesn't get what it wants. This is the better way to put it. The subtle level of suffering is the suffering of change, which is what we call happiness, which
Right.
is actually getting what attachment does want. We think that is what will bring happiness, but it's actually a subtler, more pervasive level of suffering, because it changes into the gross level of suffering. That's the way to say it.
Okay,
You with me?
okay. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much. Well, time to go home or go somewhere. So we think we've been 90 minutes, something useful, hopefully. Food for thought. Work on our minds. See our delusions, have accountability, be brave enough to own I did this and I did that, and then think, how can I fix it? Because this is the point also. This default assumption that I'm not good enough is simply a mistake. You are good enough. We are good enough. So we have to own our mistakes, say, how can I change it? And then rejoice in our good qualities. This is unbelievably important. We never do that. I've never met a person yet who says, I can't stop thinking good things, Robina. It's just true. So we've got to start practicing thinking good things, positive things, realistic things. I'm doing okay. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best every second. So that gives you then the courage to own the rubbish. If we're always beating ourselves up, it's hard to own the rubbish because we exaggerate it. Guilt exaggerates our badness. You know, anger says you did this and you did that and you did this and you're a bad person, and you paint the whole of that person with that angry brush. Guilt is the same. I did this and I did that and I did this and I'm a bad person. You paint the whole of yourself with that bad brush. It's exaggerating. Do what the Christians say. I love it. They say, don't criticize the sinner, criticize the sin. So guilt is the problem. Badness is the lying, stealing, killing are the problems. You're fine. So don't over exaggerate it. Don't make it a characteristic. Don't make it me. You know, it's really important. So we think like that. And we keep moving one step at a time, never giving up, delighting in our progress, practicing being content. It's cognitive therapy, I promise. Buddha's your best cognitive behavioral therapist, I promise. Changchog, Semchog, Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam, Ke Gu Chig, Ke Panyam Pa Me Pa Yang, Gong Ne, Gong Du, Paba Shog, Gewa Di, Nudo Dag, Lama Sange Drub Yone, Drowa Chik Yang Maru Pa, De Sala, Go Pa Shog. Okay, thank you, darlings. All right, never give up, keep moving, keep moving. Oh, they've all gone.
Thank you, Robina. Thank you,
Okay,
thank you.
goodbye, there you go. Thank you, that's it. I never say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye, darlings, goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Honorable Robina. Bye. Thank you.